Huge thank you to Music Magpie for their support of this video. But of course, if you want to sell your DVDs, CDs, tech, phones, even Lego, give them a shout. And here we are in October in the rain in Manchester with the final part of my interview conducted last month with Colonel Doug Hurley, the astronaut who of course went to the International Space Station recently on Dragon, the first commercial flight sent up by Elon Musk's SpaceX team. But previously he'd been the pilot of Atlantis and had flown in the shuttle, and so a fascinating man, a Manchester City supporter, which of course is why he's appearing as an interview on my channel, but also with great stories to tell from his space adventures. So with big thanks to Music Magpie for sponsoring these videos, here's the next part of my interview with Colonel Doug Hurley, where we started by talking about splashdown, which seems quite appropriate on a rainy day in Manchester, because for many, many years, the US hadn't, of course, been sending up their own rockets with a capsule on top. They'd landed with a shuttle, so they were actually landing in water for the first time for years. What was that like? I asked him.
It was about 45 years was the last time. So a little bit after the Apollo 7, I think. But anyway, it was the same capsule. But you know, a lot of folks within the space community probably know this, but maybe not everybody, that we both companies had worked through some tremendous challenges with the parachutes. Both Boeing and SpaceX had some challenges with designing the parachutes that best accomplish the mission. And I'm certain people realize that in order for the mission to be successful, the parachutes have to work every time without any issues. So they have to almost be, from an engineering standpoint, over-designed. And the compromise is how over-designed, and then what are the kind of what we call the corners of the envelopes. If say one parachute doesn't work, will the other three, in the case of Dragon, be enough to support the vehicle as it lands in the water safely? And so, yeah, I think to your point about the water landings, typically landing in the water is less forgiving than landing on land, but then you're landing in the water. You're landing in the ocean. You're far away from land. Whereas once you land on land, people are right there. They can come right to you. They can get you out. Everything's stable. So it's a design compromise. And SpaceX, I think, initially talked about potentially landing very similar to the way Soyuz lands. So Soyuz lands with a parachute, and then just prior to touchdown, they have what they call their soft landing rockets that thrust into the ground and then cushion the landing. And as anybody who's flown Soyuz would tell you, it still feels like a car crash, but it's a safe car crash. So it's a jolt, but it's a safe jolt. And then the seats do what they call stroke, which also helps with alleviating the load that gets transmitted into your body when you land. And it's a great system. Soyuz is just an incredible piece of machinery. How well it's done and how safe it is over the last 40 some years that it's been flying. But with SpaceX, certainly that was part of it. I went back and looked at some of the after action reports that the Apollo guys, and especially the Skylab guys, talked about, because the Skylab guys were probably a little bit more equivalent for what Bob and I were going to have to deal with, which was being in space for weeks or months rather than Apollo, which was only a couple weeks. And so, the thinking there is you become much more deconditioned from a gravity standpoint. And in fact, the medical guys will tell you probably after about 1 month in space, you have completely transitioned to a microgravity human being. And so you're what they call fully deconditioned, whereas, after a couple weeks, you've started that process, but you're not fully deconditioned, and your body tends to bounce back sooner. And so landing in the water just exacerbates that process. As you might imagine, anybody who goes deep sea fishing knows what I'm talking about. You may be a person who never gets sick in a car or in an airplane, and you go out deep sea fishing and that boat is doing the slow rock all day and people get sick that have never got. So just think about an astronaut who's been in space for a few months and everything else being normal, they might get sick. So we were fairly concerned that we might get sick after landing just because of being deconditioned, which is a lot of people just get sick from that. And then on top of it, we're rocking around in the ocean. But we were lucky. I think we were lucky in two ways. One, I think everybody is different, but both Bob and I had not had really any issues coming back from our shuttle flights. But we also, like I said before, knew that it would be this would be a much longer flight and we would be much more deconditioned. And then, but anyway, it felt pretty normal to us, like coming back from a shuttle flight. I felt pretty. You feel pretty heavy once you get back into the gravity field, and you're a little bit wobbly when you try to stand. Your inner ear and your vestibular system is kind of playing tricks with you. But luckily, we landed in almost flat seas in the Gulf of Mexico. So that you could certainly sense the capsule bobbing back and forth, but I never felt nauseous. And in fact, I remember remarking to Bob, kind of somewhere in the process between them coming over to hook us up to the boat and them lifting us up on board Go Searcher, it was like, man, I am hungry. So from that perspective, I was pretty happy how I felt, and really it went up from there. So I think like a lot of things with adaptation to space flight and then coming back home, it is very, very individually dependent, and we were just lucky in that both of us individually handled it okay, and then we had pretty calm seas to deal with when we did land.
So there is one little supplementary question I'm going to ask,
yeah.
which follows on from what you've just been talking about. I don't know if you ever saw The Big Bang Theory. Howard Wolowitz, one of the characters, went up into space station, and they had this joke where he was dropping a pencil, and he said, "I've got to see gravity." Was it ever like that for you? I need to feel gravity again.
Yeah, I think the common thing is when you get back, you think you're still in microgravity. So you'll go to put something down or let go of something rather than set something down on a table. And, there are many astronauts that have come home from space flights and gone and let something loose and it just falls. And then they're like, oh yeah, I'm back, but it is neat. And it's the same going up. It's like that first time you get to space and something, it just floats in front of you. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then to be able to do a somersault and then, stand on the ceiling, all those things that you do, you're just kind of pinch yourself. You're like, it's like a movie, it's like, I can't believe I'm actually living it.
I should have asked you, is the moon really blue? When you get up there, you can see it properly.
It is, the one thing that from the space station, the moon always looks smaller. And I don't know why that is. I'm sure there's some physical explanation, but it always looks like it's smaller. And of course, you're rotating around the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. So you go around the Earth in only 90 minutes. So you see these moon rises and moon sets, and then of course you're getting a sunrise and sunset every 45 minutes. So it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
So is that you finished now? I mean, are you going to stop, or? I mean, obviously, we've not been back to the moon. A lot of people wonder why we've not been back to the moon. After the skeptics, the ones who don't believe, of course, will say, because it never happened. It was Capricorn.
That's right.
It
was all, it was all fake. Yeah. No, I think, it looks like we're in really good hands to get back to the moon soon. We've had development of the Orion capsule, which is the first capsule that NASA has been working on in a long time that is designed to go beyond low Earth orbit. And that in conjunction with the Space Launch System rocket, which is a huge rocket, very, very comparable to what Apollo used in a Saturn V, the Saturn V rocket. So tentatively, as early as next year, they're supposed to potentially fly those vehicles together to do an uncrewed test flight. And so, we're well on our way again to going to the moon and hopefully to stay. You know, that was one thing with Apollo. It was like once we got there, then we kind of lost the momentum in a sense as a country. And, you know, of course, it was a totally different political dynamic back then with the Cold War and all those things. And so I think that helped us from a resource standpoint go to the moon in a relatively short amount of time. But the like a lot of things, you know, the politics dictate, you know, what happens after that, and then changes of administration and all those things. And NASA is no stranger to those things, the priorities changing. And you can certainly understand all these things. And, you know, the country, space exploration isn't the only thing a country is supposed to do, but, you know, you as an astronaut or as somebody who, you know, believes strongly in doing something, you know, that's bigger than us, that space flight is important, and discovery is important, and invention is important, and, you know, inspiring that next generation is important. So I hope that, you know, my hope is that this program is sustained through, you know, the next several years, and that we are able to go to the moon, because it certainly takes, you know, it takes a dedication, not only politically, but it takes a dedication of a workforce. It takes, certainly it takes money, it takes research, it takes, you know, just hard work. And you know, you've got to, you know, accept that they're going to be challenges, technical challenges. There might actually, you know, there could be accidents, all those things that we dealt with in Commercial Crew. You would expect that to happen for this moon program, and you just hope that the will is there to continue, because it is an important part, and then an important stepping stone to go to Mars, which I think ultimately would just be an incredible event for humanity. You know, not just whoever gets to go. And for me personally, you know, I'm 53 and have flown 3 times, and kind of like we talked about before, you know, while I certainly wouldn't say that it's completely off the table, I think, you know, once again, it's the time frame and the family discussions and all those things. I certainly wouldn't necessarily say that I'm the guy that should go do this, but never say never. But it's just, you know, we certainly have a talented group of astronauts that are more than capable of kind of taking kind of what we have given them, in a sense, with this, you know, this new first U.S. vehicle to fly into orbit in 9 years, and kind of a sort of a template of how to get there, and then the challenges and the hard work and the engineering that needs to be done in order to do this. And then, you know, obviously going to the moon from a technical standpoint is an exponential leap from what we did. And it's going to take talented people, and it's going to take people who are willing to, are not willing to accept failure, and people that are willing to kind of take the good with the bad, because it's not going to be this, you know, certainly wasn't for us. You know, we had some real challenges with development of Dragon, and they've had real challenges with the development of Starliner. And that's normal. I mean, we had that when I was doing flight test. We had near misses, we had accidents, we had engineering challenges that were not easily overcome, and took some incredible work and delayed programs. And I mean, I think that's all that stuff kind of goes hand in hand. But, you know, from a political standpoint, sometimes that's hard to accept, that, you know, when your launch date moves from this year to this year, then people start losing faith, and we're just spending money and we're not really doing anything. And it's just, so all those things have to work together to kind of be successful. And it's not something, you know, you just don't go to the moon next week. You know, it's something that takes, you know, decades in some cases, certainly in today's environment, you know, where, you know, I think people say, well, we went to the moon in roughly 10 years from the time President Kennedy made the declaration. But the difference is we had a laser focus, and NASA had about 5 to 6% of the United States budget. NASA currently has about 0.5% of the budget. And so just from a monetary standpoint or a resources standpoint, we have nothing comparable. And so you have to be, you know, the expectation is it takes longer to get it's just going to take longer because you don't have that type of resource that you had, you know, in the 60s, where NASA had a blank check to go to the moon and a huge workforce supporting it. And I think the other part of it is, for me, is to be successful to go to the moon, and we're seeing this already, and certainly to go to Mars, you have to have not only a public NASA government organization, but you also have to have private companies invested and other countries invested that are like mine, you know. And I think to share the burden, but also share their talents, and you know, as a world community, you know, go off to the moon. Or certainly Mars is going to be a world effort, I think, for mankind to actually get there successfully. I don't think just NASA could do that by themselves. It's going to have to be multiple countries, multiple space agencies, and private companies. Everybody's going to have to be invested in order to make that successful, because it's just such a hard thing to do given current technology, that it's going to take that type of effort to be successful.
I spoke to Colonel Doug at length in September, just around about the time when the Lionel Messi to City rumours were very strong, and actually I think the deal had just about collapsed. This was his reaction then to the prospect of Lionel Messi coming to Manchester City.
In fact, I saw that just before I started to talk to you, and while I was not surprised in the least, you know, you can't help but think what he would have brought to the team, you know, and his relationship with Pep and his relationship with Sergio. It just would have been neat, you know. And
I think it's fair to say, with you talking to me, it would have been an out of this world signing, wouldn't it?
It would have been the signing of probably the last 3 decades. I mean, I think, you know, because but also I think, you know, as a realist, and you know, I'm a fan just like you are, you know, you're like, oh, that would be so neat. But I always was at the point with him that it was just like, you know, never quite I almost got there. And I can tell you this, a few days ago, I almost got there. It's like, I think he might actually end up at City, you know. And I also relished, in a lot of ways, I relished the thought of him playing for City and the rest of the football world just turning inside out, and enjoying that part of it too, because, you know, just as we talked about before. But then, you know, the other part of me thought is like, okay, what are we going to do with Raheem, and what are we going to do with Riyad Mahrez, and what are we going to do with Bernardo Silva, and you know, how would Messi fit into Pep's plans? And while that would have been exciting, you know, those other guys are wonderful players too, and I think you know, I really enjoy seeing the different combinations at times that Pep puts together. I know he probably got pretty beat up over the Lyon game, and so I'm not going to pile on, but you know, it's just it would have been really neat to see Messi play, but thankfully I didn't quite get to the point where I already considered him there. But I'm sure that folks are kind of probably experiencing a bit of a hangover now, because it's been going on for a couple 3 weeks now. So, but I think as far as the rest of the transfer window and the season, I think, you know, and I think it's been said, I you know, and I'm not a pundit, and I'm not an expert, and I played football as a child and a young adult, but so that's my experience. But I just think, you know, part of what kind of this recent season, you know, is in many ways, it's just a one-off, you know, just because of all the challenges that the teams had to deal with. And so I don't know if we ever really saw the true potential of this team in some ways, but I do, and kind of as I alluded to before, I do think they really, really missed Vincent Kompany this year. You know, you just see the teams that are really successful almost completely, and this is where City had some challenges defensively. It's just, you know, you have that dominant center back who just kind of runs the defense. and Aymeric Laporte is potentially that guy for us, but with his injury, it just really, so early in the season, it just really, I don't think he ever really got going. And but they're certainly a different team when he's playing. And I think if with the signings that they've gotten now, and potentially with a couple more, I was very disappointed personally when Leroy left. And of course, same thing. You don't necessarily know exactly what the story was there either. Whether it was some challenges between him and Pep, or whether it was a family decision, or whether he just wanted to go back to Germany. You just never know. But I remember Jack and I were at the Schalke game, the Champions League game, and to watch him and Raheem as wingers play together was in some ways that was one of the most incredible sights I've ever seen, was that 7-0 Schalke game at City. And he was a big part of it, and just his raw talent was amazing. And I just always believed that City were a different team when he was on the field. And so it's hard for me, because all the subtleties that you certainly can't see on TV that you could see when you're at the match in person, what the sticking points were with he and Pep, or even if there were any. Maybe it was just Pep wanted him to play a certain way and he didn't play that way. I don't really know, but his raw talent was amazing, and his speed was amazing. And it's too bad that didn't work out, because I think he's the one player that is left, where I thought that, there was still something on the table for him to have at City. But you just never know. There's money, there's family challenges, there's agents, there's, how it is. There's so many variables that go to that. And, but it would have been nice to see him stay. But I think, I don't know much about Ferran Torres. I don't know. I've seen Nathan Ake play for many years now, and he seems like he's a wonderful defender, and I hope he fits in. And I think he's going to add to the mix. It's certainly for when they are in the multiple cups and Champions League to have some rotation and get folks rested, because I think that's, the bigger teams, that's where your big advantage lies, is you can be successful in all these competitions because you've got a bench almost as strong as the first 11 you put out there. But I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I think we can use another defender for sure. And then of course you hear the rules, or hear the rumors about, how much longer Sergio is going to play, and, when's the next striker going to be brought in, and things that nature. And I'm not certain that needs to happen in this transfer window, but, how much longer does Sergio want to play at City? And, and then of course, for me, David Silva was probably my favorite player, and to see him go, is disappointing, because I think, and it sounds like they asked him, but it would have been nice to see him play another year. But of course, you would have always said that, right? It's like a player like him, just the classiest player, and by all accounts, a wonderful person. But you can certainly understand, and I almost feel that way as an astronaut sometimes. It's like, okay, I've been here a long time. Might be time to do, it's just maybe time to switch gears a little bit and do something different, because it is a bit of a pressure cooker. And I think, especially, being from, maybe a little bit different climate, after living in Manchester in 10 years. I'll never forget the first time we got in a taxi in Manchester, and the driver said something along the lines, well, it always rains on Tuesday in Manchester. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, and then he goes, and mostly on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you can understand these Spanish players where they probably want to get back to some maybe sunnier climates and things of that nature. So Arsenal are coming, certainly. Chelsea have done a ton of work in the transfer market, understandably so, because they were in a ban situation. So those two teams, I have to think, are better this year, for sure. And of course, then Mikel knows Pep, knows what Pep's going to do a lot of times. So that's a real challenge, certainly. And then, So yeah, I think like you, I thought certainly if we'd have played the way we were capable of, I certainly think they'd have made it to the Bayern game. But that Bayern game would have been something. Uh, and City of 2 years ago could certainly have handled Bayern, but I don't know about if they'd have played Bayern this year, it would have been an interesting match, I think, at the very least. But and wide open. I think it would have been an incredible match for the neutral, because I think the Bayern Lyon game wasn't, and even the final, you kind of felt like PSG had to score first, and if I think PSG probably played as well as they could have played, although Neymar seemed like he kind of gave up on things towards the end. But Bayern just they're a pretty good team, but I have no doubt in my mind the 18-19 or 19-20 or 17-18, 18-19 City teams would have beaten this Bayern team. No question in my mind, Ian, none. And so that's the part that bothers me a little bit, because the Champions League thing, it's like, we should have certainly made a final by now, and or at least the semifinal, and it's disappointing that, because I think the team that made it, I think it was Pellegrini, right? They made it to the semis against Real Madrid, and then ended up losing on 1-0 aggregate, I believe.
Yeah.
That team was not the team of those 2 years previous to this year, I don't think. I mean, you certainly know them better than I do, but I thought that Centurion team was unbelievable and should have won everything. And but I mean, it's a sport, a little bit of bad luck here, a VAR call there. I mean, you think about some of the Tottenham Champions League game last year was, I still can't believe that counted. That I still can't believe it, so that's the kind of stuff that sticks with you. And you're just like, you just need one of those to go the right way, and they would have been in the semis, or they would have been in the finals. And so I keep hoping they're going to get, they'll get some good luck, and then one more player that is the linchpin of the defense. And I think, if that happens, I think anything's possible for sure. We're really, really hoping that maybe next spring we'll be able to get back over there. But like you said, there's so much uncertainty, but it's only September. So hopefully, we've got a lot of smart people, like in the space program. We got a lot of smart people in the fields of medicine and disease control and immunology that are working hard to hopefully get this COVID thing managed to a point where people can feel a little safer, and get a little bit more back to normal. Because it was funny. A lot of people have asked us, it's like, why did you come back? Why didn't you stay in space longer? And you can sort of understand what they're trying to get at. It's like, well, I really miss my family, so that's why I came back. But I like a lot of other things, we'll get through this and hopefully be better off as a world society for it. But it doesn't mean that it's been easy by any stretch. And I know everybody's been touched by this disease, and it's not very forgiving. And so hopefully, our doctors can solve this problem sooner rather than later.
Once again, big thanks to Music Magpie for their support. And remember, they've helped me, so why don't you go to them?